October 23rd meeting of the Rotary Club of Louisville. I am delighted to be here, and I appreciate all of you being here. It's a privilege to serve you all. If you run into Ashley Brower today's her birthday. Give her a shout out. I don't think she's here. She's probably celebrating her. I first want to talk about Rotarian Jan Grayson. He passed away early Monday morning. It was sort of an unexpected illness. He was brief time in hospice care. We don't have arrangements yet. We'll share. Jan was a great guy. You guys know that. He was at that club 10.5 years. He served on the Finance and International Committee. He was Paul Harris Fellow on the board of directors of Voice of America. They had a breakfast Tuesday morning. Several of us were there, several Rotarians. Certainly was on our minds during the meeting. He was very active in the local ballet. It was about 10 years ago I served on the Actors Theater Board with him, so I got to know him real well there. Just a great guy. So let's, if you will, join me in a moment of silence. Okay. Thank you. Ann Monell, Executive Director of the Legacy Foundation of Kentuckiana Rotary on the Louisville Board Director, is going to give our invocation today.
Thank you, President Kent. Please join me in a moment of reflection. As we gather today as members of Rotary, we acknowledge the spirit of fellowship that brings us together, united by a common purpose, service above self. As we share this meal, we bring our attention to the vibrant tapestry of Louisville, enriched daily by the hands, hearts, and hopes of our immigrant community. May this time together nourish not only our bodies, but also our understanding and compassion. May it remind us of the power of welcoming, the beauty of diversity, and our shared responsibility to create a welcoming and thriving city for all who call Louisville home. For the opportunity to gather, learn, and grow, we are grateful.
Thank you. Now to lead our four-way test and our pledge, Kent Wayland, co-owner of Wayland Ventures. He's also a club director. He's chair of our hospitality commission.
If you could all please join me in the Pledge of the Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
Okay, time to introduce us to your guests.
President Kent, my guest today is, my name is Nick Garner. My guest today is Anita Stump, CEO of the Bullitt County Chamber of Commerce, and prospectively, one of the founding members, perhaps, of the Bullitt County Rotary Club.
We hope so. Thank you for joining us. And a special shout out to Nick, because he met with you all earlier this week. The Assistant District Governor, Cheryl, was thrilled with the meeting. I got briefed on it, so we're very hopeful. And hopefully you'll appreciate us and want to do it, and we'll help you in any way to get started.
Thank you.
It'll be great.
President Ken, fellow Rotary, yes. I'm Jeremy Boperka. My guest today is good friend, colleague, and occasional partner in crime, Keith Seals. He is Director of Sales at Rand Crutcher.
The son kicked the penalty kick that won the game for St. X over Trinity before the railing fell. His son was running to the railing, but hopefully he did not get hurt. Right?
Hello again, Ann Linnell with the Legacy Foundation of Kentuckiana. My guest today is Anna Kate Chavez, who is the grants associate, my grants associate with the Legacy Foundation of Kentuckiana. Delighted to have her here. And then on behalf of our speaker, Crutcher, DeJaco, she has two guests with her today. Her colleagues from Catholic Charities of Louisville, Ellen Hopper, Chief Development Officer, and their very special and wonderful new Director of Individual Philanthropy, and my husband, Brian Linnell.
Good morning, President Ken and Rotarians. I'm Melissa Cobb, and today I have two countdown guests to join me. This morning we have Wendy Cosby, who is joining us for the second time, and hopefully she will join us soon as a member. She is with Republic Bank, as well as Nancy Ganote, who is with Mirazon and joining us for her second time. So we hope both these ladies will join us soon. Thank you.
Hello, President Ken. So I'm Linda Bartram, and I'm all about you. So my guests today are seven. First of all, Nika Powell, who is librarian at Western High School, and two of her interactors, who are Hussein Ali and Sherry Thomas. Can you stand, please? Then from Iroquois High School, teacher James Gibson, and two of his interactors, Olivia Peters and Sofia Perez Lopez. Thank you. And also, my comrade in arms as we move through the Rotary process. So from the University of Louisville, Assistant Director of Undergraduate Student Services at the College of Business. I've got my new paper here, the title is so long. And she is our on-campus, boots on the ground Rotary advisor. And that was, can you stand up please? And this is Renisha Davis.
Hello, my name is Courtney Evans, and I'm with Jewish Family and Career Services. And my guest today is Katie Lutonka, who is the Chief Operating Officer at JCS, and she also oversees our Immigrant and Refugee Service program.
Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us. Louis Seeger, where you stand, Louis, is at the What is Rotary table, so right after the meeting, stop by and see him, and he'll weigh in on more detail about our club. Tomorrow's United Nations Day, and we have teamed up with our district and other clubs in Kentucky, as well as the United Nations Association, to hold an event this Monday from 5 to 9 to raise awareness around human trafficking and sextortion. It is free. You can participate in person or via Zoom. Our new Living Well Through Life series kicks off Saturday morning, November 15th, with yoga for all ages at the Playport Indoor Space at Waterfront Park. Feel free to invite a friend or a coworker or a yoga enthusiast or just someone you would like to have see the new event. It's a good one at Playport. It is our turn to host our annual Joint Rotary Kiwanis Club Thanksgiving celebration, where we kick off the Red Kettle campaign. And George is signing up volunteers for it already. I feel cold when I sign up for it. It's That event will be Tuesday, November 25th, right here. Our speakers, Reverend Dr. Andrew Pomerville, president of local seminary, will share his thoughts on gratitude. Our social activities committee has organized a Rotary Day at Actors Theater. That's Saturday, December 6th, so you can ring the bells in the morning and go there in the afternoon. It's the matinee showing of A Christmas Carol. Our annual Rotary meeting and holiday party, combined in one, you all want to go there. It's at the Hurstbourne Country Club, Wednesday, December 3rd. So put that on your calendar. And you're going to go to littlerotary.org, put all that stuff on your calendar. There's more detail there. And as always, please follow us online, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and YouTube. It's a veteran crew today. I don't know if there's any rookie new members. I didn't see any. All right. Oh, there is two. Stand up. There it is. Give your names and tell people you want to see. Paris, you go.
I'm Leanne Alsop with St. Joseph Children's Home.
Awesome.
Paris Plata with Just for Success.
And a lot of volunteer work. Just with you, what? Yesterday. Because they were bad reports. We also, Dr. Shawnee, I know you're here.
Yep.
Where are you? Come on up. I like to profile Rotarian each week. He's the CEO of Park Duval Community Health Centers, vice chair of the West End School Committee. So tell us more. You're also a TV host too, aren't you?
So for those who don't know, I was born and raised in Chicago, in Inglewood, and that is right now the crime capital of the world. Wasn't back in my day when I grew up, but my high school was #1 in the state in football, so I played football, ran track. I was recruited by the Big Ten, and ended up going to Tennessee State at the last minute. So how did I end up in this particular career? Because my background, my master's and my bachelor's is in biosystems engineering. So I was an architectural engineer by training, environmental, and went down and landed in the health department here and learned about community health assessments, learned about social terms of health, harmony, equity, and how to reshape community. And so I fell in love with public health. I ran 3 health departments. I was a leading expert in COVID. When I was in Brookline, Massachusetts, did the first mask mandate in Holland, Massachusetts, in the nation, and saved many lives. And so I've come back to Louisville to sort of dedicate my life back to this work of ministry of health. So that's it.
Don't go far because you're going to be introducing our speaker. Dr. Linda Bartramore, come on back up. You're the chair of the Interact Rotary Club Committee, so welcome to all you all. I'm glad you're here. You have a special presentation for us. Linda was the 2023-24 Lifetime Service Award recipient. Pretty impressive. This is a Paul Harris Fellow +3.
So advisors put in a great deal of time at their high school. This is James from Iroquois High School, and my dear Mika from Western High School. They have so many projects each year. There's at least one every month. Some months like October have 3. So we give them a very tiny stipend for their services. So Mika, this is for you, James, and this is for you from Louisville Rotary. An appreciation for your service to your school and to the community at large as you raise our youth. Can you come back, please? University of Louisville. Renisha, could you come up and let's get a group picture because these are my advisors. These are my advisors. And I think a group picture would be a good idea.
Appreciate all of you. We have one more important deal. Just gonna take this on. Tomorrow is World Polio Day, and I'd like to invite Rotary Foundation Chair Amy Luttrell, who's also President and CEO of Goodwill Industries of Kentucky, and a major donor, level 2.
Thank you, President Ken. Hello, everybody. So, like our president said, tomorrow is World Polio Day, so we wanted to take just a couple of minutes to talk about Rotary's Polio Plus program. I know you've heard me talk about that a little bit before. But I think of Polio Plus as kind of the ultimate example of the power of Rotary's 45,000 clubs worldwide to do really big things together. Back in the day, now today, Rotary partners with UNICEF, with the World Health Organization, with the Gates Foundation and the CDC. But back in 1985, 40 years ago when this all started, Rotary was alone. Rotary was the first one to have a vision of a polio-free world. But since that time, that's a long time ago, right? We have seen the number of countries dwindle who have polio from 125 to 2. Just 2 today. Pakistan and Afghanistan. And you think about those countries and you can imagine why they're the last 2. But still working on that. That is the power of perseverance over 40 years, the power of partnerships, and the power of Rotary, right? Somebody at this year's Rotary International Convention said Rotary had the audacity to start the job and the tenacity to finish it. And I think that's a really good way to think about this. We have a 2-minute video just to give you an idea of how complex and difficult and impressive this project is. So hopefully we can get that video up now.
Listen to the communities, both online and to our colleagues offline. And we try to understand what are their needs, what do they want to hear so they can take the vaccine.
Can you hear?
In 2014, I saw a social media post about the project of Rotary, which is the younger age group of Rotary. The moment I was invited to the club, I saw about the polio eradication initiative, and I said to myself back then that, oh wow, it would be so great one day to be working on this program. And somehow, 10 years after, I got the chance to do this. I work for UNICEF as a digital communication specialist, working on misinformation detection, management, deploying digital campaigns. We try to keep the people that are currently vaccinating to keep vaccinating. And then we are trying to tackle the missing ones, the ones that are still reluctant, the ones that don't have yet access to vaccines or that are refusing it. In this case, in SINT, we notice that we have refusals due to the fact that frontline workers are not very well accepted.
Give it a minute, see if we can get it started again.
For those of you that are as old as me, we're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
You think we can get it, or should I go on?
I think it's the connection.
To the
Okay.
online and to our colleagues offline. And we try to understand what are their needs, what do they want to hear so they can take the vaccine. In 2014, I saw a social media post about the project of Rotary, which is the younger age group of Rotary. The moment I was invited to the club, I saw
Okay, that gives you the gist. You can tell that there's a lot of suspicion in some of these countries about vaccines. Sometimes there's violence. Over these 40 years, wars have been stopped. People delivering this vaccine to children have actually been killed. That's how difficult all this is, but we're going to do it anyway. This is truly history making. Polio will be only the second disease ever to be eradicated. Smallpox was first, and each one of us has a chance to be part of that, making that history. Now, you know that you can give anytime during the Rotary year, but since tomorrow's World Polio Day, if you give today or tomorrow, or if you've already given, since we've been talking about this the last couple of weeks, you're going to be eligible for a drawing. So we have, I think, a very nice bottle of bourbon, and we also have 500 Paul Harris Fellow points to get you closer to your next level. So if you give today or tomorrow, you can be in that drawing. Remember that when you give, your contribution, your gift is matched 2-to-1 by the Gates Foundation. So say if you're able to give $100, that $100 turns into $300. The only other thing is, I want to say, see me after the meeting. If you need help, we'll make it easy on you to give. If you give online and you haven't done that before, you're going to need your club number and your membership number, and I have that. And I can also tell you exactly where your giving stands if you're wondering how close you are to the next Paul Harris Fellow. And gifts to Polio Plus, as well as gifts to the Share Fund, count toward your Paul Harris Fellow recognition. So encourage everybody to think about doing that. Give a little bit of money. Our club has a $10,000 goal for Polio Plus this year. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Swanee Jett, come on back up.
So that's an old photo. So if anybody's wondering what is happening with my hair, so I retired in August from the military service, 24 years. In my Native American heritage, I let my hair grow out, so this is quite natural. No bad. So I'm going to introduce our speaker. Thank you. So this young lady is a special young lady. Lisa Crutcher has done a lot, and I would say this: she has a divine calling. Now, her previous life, I don't know what she was doing, but I would say this: she's been 8 years with Catholic Churches of Global. She's been there since 2017. But the interesting reason I say her previous life is she spent 17 years as a commercial litigator for wide turnkey combs. No, that don't match because a master's is in theology. So I'm thoroughly confused. But she has a doctorate, Juris doctorate from Virginia Law School. So now she's doing what she's supposed to do, doing all the law. So bless her soul. She went the long way. But I appreciate her background. I have worked with Catholic churches for years because I actually screen people within the first 90 days to get citizenship and get the health requirements they need in place. So, welcome.
In fairness, I got the theology degree a long time after I got the law degree. So, the topic I'm here to talk about today is immigration in Louisville. And for those of you all who aren't super familiar with either the state of immigration in Louisville or Catholic Charities, you may be wondering why these two things go together. So, first of all, Catholic Charities is the arm for social ministry of the Archdiocese of Louisville. Our mission is to support and accompany struggling families and individuals to greater self-sufficiency, one relationship at a time. We do this by working across the 24 counties of the Archdiocese of Louisville and in partnership with our local Catholic Church as well as others of goodwill. We do this in a lot of different things. One of our major pillars, for instance, is food security. We operate 3 large food pantries. ministries. Sister Visitor Center in the West End, Father Jack Jones, which is just around the corner here, and Bread of Life in Nelson County. We also have a large community gardening program, Common Earth Gardens. Some of you all know some of the other work that we do, such as the ombudsman, who are serving in every long-term care facility in our Kipta and Lincoln Trail regions. That's over 10,000 residents in nearly 200 facilities. Rotarians may be aware of our Bakita Empowerment Initiative, which is Kentucky's flagship anti-human trafficking provider, serving men and women, adults and children, Native and foreign-born survivors of sex and labor trafficking. But the reason I'm here today is to talk specifically about our work with the immigrant community, which is another major pillar of our work. More than half of our staff work in one of these programs: refugee services, language services, immigration legal services, the Kentucky Office for Refugees, which is work that we've been doing for over 50 years, that we've been resettling refugees here in Louisville. We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of that program this year. So today, I want to talk a little bit about immigrants. Got it? Okay. I want to talk a little bit about immigrants and refugees specifically and what they've brought to our city. I want to talk a little bit about what the legal landscape looks like for people who want to make Louisville their home, and what the current reality looks like for the immigrants who are among us today. So first, let me take you way, way back. We're going to talk, the history of immigration in Louisville runs all the way back to the very beginnings of our city. When George Rogers Clark was coming to establish the first settlement at the Falls of the Ohio, the United States didn't have any laws about immigration. The very first one was the Naturalization Act of 1790. It said that if you lived in the United States for 2 years, you could naturalize as a citizen. Within a few years, that changed to 5 years. But that was the only restriction that existed for the first wave of American immigration. Louisville really was booming in the first part of the 1800s. That's when our city was first starting to grow, and it runs right alongside the second wave of American immigration and the first wave of anti-immigrant sentiment. The rise of the Know Nothing Party in the 1850s was particularly terrible in Louisville. If you don't know the story of Louisville's Bloody Monday, I really encourage you to Google. Leo had a wonderful story in 2018. The Louisville Eccentric Observer ran a really great piece that's easily found online that talks about the Bloody Monday riots, in which 22 immigrant Louisvillians were killed. At that time, about a third of the people here in Louisville were Irish and German Catholic immigrants. And that included my family and probably some of you all as well. In 1832, a cholera epidemic left a lot of children orphaned in this community, particularly among the immigrant community who were living in some of the more impoverished places that were more stricken by cholera. In 1849, German Catholic parishes came together to found the St. Joseph Catholic Orphan Society, which is still operating today, St. Joe's. It was the first and the largest, but certainly not the only, Catholic enterprise that set out to support the children in our community. And so the entity of Catholic Charities was established in 1939 and then incorporated separately from the diocese much later in 1993. But its purpose always was to coordinate the work of charitable institutions in the diocese and to organize and direct the professional work and volunteer work that was being done on behalf of children and families. So for many years, the primary work of Catholic Charities was child welfare and adoption. Some people in this room may have personal stories that reflect that adoption work. I'm often hearing from people in the community when I talk about Catholic Charities, oh, my sister, there's always somebody's got some family connection to tell. But in the 1970s, the culture was beginning to change. There was less demand for maternity homes when young women found themselves pregnant. The state got involved in foster care, and something new was on the horizon for Catholic Charities of Louisville. In 1975, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops joined with the U.S. State Department to begin the systematic work of refugee resettlement. Catholic Charities in Louisville and the USCCB had already done some work in the aftermath of World War II. But at this time, with the wars that were going on in Southeast Asia, there was a real interest in systematically resettling people who had lost their homes and livelihoods and wanted to begin a new life in the United States.
You can see here on this slide, that was the beginning of a very long and diverse effort by Catholic Charities. We have resettled more than 23,000 people into Louisville over the last 50 years. We were joined in that work by Kentucky Refugee Ministries in 1990, and in the past few years, International Rescue Coalition has also begun doing some work locally. And as you can see, a whole lot of people from a whole lot of different places in the world have made Louisville home as a result. These are the biggest groups in these time periods. There were certainly others, and these time periods are not precise. For instance, you see the Sudanese up there. It's in the decade of the 2000s. We have seen Sudanese refugee arrivals in recent years as well. It's just not as big a percentage as it was in our community 20 years ago. In recent years, the refugees from the Democratic Republic of the Congo have been the largest percentage by far, except for the Cubans. So the Cubans are up here on this slide. In the beginning of the 1980s through 2008, there was a particular program called the Cuban-Haitian Entrant Program. That program ceased at the end of the Obama administration. But Cubans who were no longer coming through this specific program were still showing up at the border. And once they were allowed in, whether on parole or an asylum claim or what have you, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, Louisville is where they already knew somebody, so this is where they came. We've seen 50,000 Cubans come to Louisville in the past 5 years, on their own dime, under their own steam. The average age of those 50,000 Cubans is 32. Last year, about 3,000 people were resettled as refugees across Kentucky. About 1,700 of them came to Louisville, mostly from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Numbers 2 through 5 on the list of where people came from were Somalia, Sudan, Afghanistan, and Syria. Let me tell you a little bit about the refugee process. At the end of June 2024, there were an estimated 122 million people around the world who have been forced to flee their homes. Some of those folks are internally displaced, meaning they're still within their home country, even though they're no longer in their home city or region. That's 1 in more than 67 people. Children are about 30% of the world's total population, but about 40% of those forcibly displaced. People often end up in refugee camps, typically run by the United Nations or the Red Cross. Sometimes they are in those refugee camps for a very, very long time. If the Civil War is taking a terribly long time to resolve, or the strife, or the natural disaster, if things are not able to be put back together in a timely fashion, people can spend decades living in refugee camps. And sometimes those folks are still holding on to the hope that they're going to eventually be able to go back to the place that they came from. But for other people, the desire eventually is to move on. They're ready to go somewhere else and start over. Resettlement is intended as a permanent process. So displaced people who are willing to give up that chance to return home in order to start a new life somewhere in a different place can apply to the UN High Commission on Refugees. And the countries which are willing to resettle, and historically that has not been many, the United States, Canada, Australia, Sweden, maybe a couple of others, they get together on a yearly basis and they decide how many people they're willing to take in and what places are the most stressed and in most need of people to be leaving the refugee camps. The State Department then manages a very elaborate screening process. 2 to 3 years to complete that screening process. It involves health checks, multiple in-person interviews, biometrics, literally everything that somebody can think of. And then once a refugee is accepted into the process within the United States, they're assigned to a refugee resettlement agency. Historically speaking, the U.S., and George W. Bush, the Obama years, we were looking at about 8,000 people a year across the United States. The first Trump administration cut that back to a very small number. Then the Biden administration really tried to ramp it up because the number of displaced people had really increased. That's historically how this program has worked. So after that very intense screening process, folks arrive in the United States and they are greeted by resettlement staff. That's us, the Catholic Charities. That's the folks at Kentucky Refugee Ministries. We find those people a place to live. We conduct cultural orientation, take them to health screenings, as Dr. Jeff was talking about.
get kids enrolled in school, get parents in English as a second language training, and help them find jobs. Typically, working age adults between 18 and 65 will be working within 60 to 90 days of arriving in the U.S. And that is only the beginning for them. As you can see from this slide, this is an investment that pays off for the U.S. government over time. Employed refugees don't stay in those original jobs. They move on to positions with higher earnings. And the longer you take the time horizon, the more money the U.S. government makes back off that initial investment to get those folks here to the United States and get them established. So historically, this is the way that the process is working. Right now, the United States has put a hold on incoming refugee admissions and canceled all of its contracts with its national level resettlement providers. No new arrivals have come to the United States since January 20th of 2025, except for a group of white South Africans who were identified as refugees by the administration, but did not go through the process with the UN the way that refugees historically have done. So what I want you to know is how this really affects us here in Louisville. Between Catholic Charities and KRM, many thousands of people have made Louisville their home. And on the list of states that do refugee resettlement, Kentucky has routinely been in the top 10. Not per capita, total. We're up there with states that have much, much larger populations. And we do a really, really good job at refugee resettlement in this community. When refugees come to Louisville, they don't leave and move somewhere else. They tell their family and friends who got resettled in other parts of the country how great it is here, and then those folks move here too. What this has meant for our city, other than some really great restaurants, is in this century, the factor that has kept Louisville from losing population in 2 censuses now has been growth among foreign-born residents of this community. Now, of course, not all the foreign-born people in Louisville came as refugees. So I want to talk a little bit about immigrants more generally. And y'all, this is part of a really big, longer presentation that I give that it goes into a lot more detail. I have really tried to boil this down as much as possible. So I hope that this is going to be coherent. I welcome your questions afterward. And if you really want to know more, find me. I'll tell you when I'm giving the big presentation some other time. Okay? We're going to start with some true false. Most immigrants are undocumented and here illegally. Think to yourself, correct. About 3/4 of the immigrants in this country are active green card holders or have become naturalized as citizens. The immigration process has gotten a lot tougher in modern times. Yeah. Until the late 1800s, we had an open immigration system, as we talked about. In the early 1920s, passage to America became easier and regulations became more difficult. So you think about the third wave of immigration. If your family came before 1917, they came legally by showing up. And after 1882, paying 50 cents, which if we were keeping up with inflation, that'd be about $17 today. The 1917 Immigration Act was a direct response to who was coming. Too many Catholics, too many Jews, too many Asians. Let's make it harder for people to get in here. True or false? More undocumented immigrants come with legal visas and let them expire than there are people who cross the border. That's true. About half of the people who are undocumented in the U.S. today have overstayed a legal visa. So when we talk about documented and undocumented, what we mean by that, what we mean by documented people, is people who have permission from the government to be here and the paperwork to stay. Whereas the undocumented are people who either never had permission to be here, what I'll call entered without inspection, or EWI, that's the acronym, or they had permission at one point, and when that permission expired, they still stayed. So you might be asking why I don't refer to illegal immigrants. And the answer is, although the action of coming here or staying is not legal, we don't automatically refer to people who have broken a law as illegal. If you miss too much school, we don't call you illegal, even if you're charged with truancy.
Also, immigration violations are generally considered administrative violations of civil law. This is essentially the same procedurally as getting a speeding ticket. Anybody in here ever got one of those? You're all illegal. There can be criminal offenses in immigration law, such as returning to the country after you've been deported. That is not the vast, vast majority of the people that we are thinking of when we talk about undocumented immigrants. Specifically, let's remember that people are here on one of two visas. You can have an immigrant visa or a non-immigrant visa. Non-immigrant visas limit the scope of your activities. You're here temporarily for a particular purpose. If you are engaging in activities beyond the purpose of your visa, you are breaking the immigration laws. So if you're here as a student and you're working, that's an immigration violation. In addition, there's a significant difference in the law between folks who have come over the border without permission versus people who have overstayed their visa. I'm realizing there's an acronym on this slide that I haven't explained. VWP stands for Visa Waiver Program. The Visa Waiver Program exists with countries with whom the U.S. has reciprocal admission for things like tourism. So VWP countries are places like Canada and Ireland. So 150,000 of the overstay visas, people who've overstayed their visas and are present in the U.S., were people who came from places like Japan. That's probably not what you're thinking of when you're thinking about our undocumented population. So, you may be wondering, why don't people just come legally or get legalized when they get here? I'm going to back up for a second. I missed this. If you have entered without inspection, there is a statutory bar on your return to the United States. We don't want to incentivize people to come without permission. So if you're in the United States, you came without a visa in the first place. Even if you have an immediate relative who is a citizen, who would be able to petition for you to legally be in the United States, you must leave the United States in order to apply to return. You must leave, if you've been in the U.S. for more than a year, you must leave for 10 years before that application is filed. So, let's talk a little bit about what's in our current immigration law. First of all, our immigration law was passed in 1965. In 1986, the Reagan amnesty gave undocumented immigrants the opportunity to gain legal status. If they'd been here for at least 4 years, they had a clean criminal record, they could pass a test of knowledge of English and of civics, then they were given the opportunity to regularize their status. We have not offered that opportunity to anybody since. That was 40 years ago. I think it's also important to know that in the 1980s and the years preceding, there were actually more total border crossings than there were in the 1990s and years after. But because about as many people left every year as arrived, the total number of unauthorized immigrants stayed relatively constant. It was about 3 million. But in 1996, we passed some legislation that increased penalties for illegal immigration, including that 10-year bar. And it had the unintended consequence of creating long-term undocumented residents of the United States because it became so difficult to come in that nobody left. Basically, increased border enforcement locked in undocumented residents. So, who gets to be a legal immigrant? When we're talking about a legal immigrant, mostly what we're talking about is somebody who holds a green card, a lawful permanent residence. A green card does expire. It has to be renewed every 10 years. By statute, the U.S. only can issue 700,000 green cards in a year. Typically, in recent years, it's been about 675,000 green cards issued. These aren't necessarily for new arrivals. So people who are already here on non-immigrant visas, converting their status, are taking up some of those 675,000. So let's say that you are here on a tourist visa or a student visa and you marry a citizen. That counts towards the total. Also, anybody renewing their green card is going to count towards that total. There's a cap on the number of green cards that can be issued to immigrants from any given country. We also run a green card lottery. 55,000 green cards get given out every year to countries with historically low immigration rates. Your odds are about 1 in 173, so it's better than Powerball. But chances are still fairly low. So who gets those green cards? There's two primary channels by which people can access a green card. One is family-based. The 1965 Immigration Act is fundamentally structured around a system of family preferences. You can see this up here on the category, the preference list, 1st through 4th. What's not here? There are no anchor babies in the U.S. law, and that's because children cannot sponsor their parents or their siblings until those citizen children are 21 years old. And if those parents came without inspection, they are subject to the 10-year bar. So if you came, you're undocumented, you have a baby in the United States, that baby is a citizen. But that child will be 21 and you will have to leave the country for 10 years before you are allowed to file the application to get in line for one of those green cards. Preference categories are also subject to a limit. It's 226,000 a year, and we still have that 7% cap on immigrants from any one country. We don't have a numerical quota. There's no specific cap on visas for spouses or parents of citizens over 21, but it does still count towards that 700,000 total. So the other route is employment-based. There's an annual limit on employment-based visas at 100,000, and no one country can get more than 7%. Typically, employment-based visas are moves to permanence for people who are already here on some other non-immigrant work-related visas, such as an H-1B visa. Is that a term some people in the audience might be familiar with? Yeah. So to get an H-1B visa, you have to show that it is a job for which there are not enough skilled native-born people to fill that job. And that the job that you are offering is offering the going wage, right? It's not that you couldn't get people to do the job because you weren't paying enough, right? This isn't an average wage for the work. There's just not enough people trained to do the work. What's not here? Manual laborers and unskilled positions. You cannot obtain a green card through an employment-based preference if you are working in a factory, on a farm, as a landscaper, as a roofer, not even if you have a job offer for a position, your employer wants to sponsor you, and your employer believes it can satisfy those requirements about not enough people being able to do the work. It's just not an option. The only people who qualify for a permanent green card based on employment are these people of exceptional ability, religious workers, and employment creators, investors. That's it. So, if you can qualify, if you have an immediate family member who is a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, or you can qualify under one of those very limited employment categories, you can apply for a green card. How long will that take? Well, right now the line for Mexico is 20 years long. I started giving this presentation, a version of this presentation, in the first Trump administration. You see there's a reference up there to Indian Group 2 employment. Those are members of professions holding advanced degrees or persons of exceptional ability, such as doctors. Indian Group 2, that application number, has only moved 3 years in the more than 5 years that I've been giving this presentation. And actually, it's gone backwards since I last updated this presentation in July of 2025. I don't know how it went backwards. And that, if you really want to depress yourself ever, get on the Google and type in Visa Bulletin, U.S. State Department, and look at how long it's currently taking to process visas for instance, somebody's siblings coming from the Philippines, or somebody's children coming from Mexico. There are different lines for married and unmarried children. So if you're unmarried and you apply and you get married, you change lines. Remember, a child can't sponsor you until that child is 21. And remember that anyone who entered without inspection is ineligible to adjust their status without leaving the country for 10 years. So, the question that many of you may have on your mind, what in the world? I think everyone in this room can agree with me that the current law is a mess, and it is not a good fit for the needs of the United States in 2025. America looked very different in 1965. We needed different things. I'm not trying to be political about how our immigration law should work, and there could be lots of different opinions about how to fix it, with different answers coming from people of goodwill. But recognizing that it is a complete disaster is the first important thing to understand when you're asking questions about what is going on in the community today. Oh, wait, before I wanted to get to that, I did just want to mention one thing that the people in this room might be interested in, and that's about Cubans. There is one special little carve-out in the immigration law that we have for Cubans. It was passed in 1966. Cubans who enter the United States legally and are in the country for 1 year and 1 day can get a work authorization and a green card. Nobody else gets that deal. So many Cubans who were currently present in the U.S. were allowed into the country. They were given permission to cross the border. And under what status is varied. There's lots of different possibilities of what they were given permission to do, but as long as they came in legally, even if that status lapsed, if they stay for 1 year and a day, they can get a green card. So if it hasn't been a year, or maybe they applied and the green card hasn't come in yet, the question is, what should they do? So, what's happening in our community today? First of all, to refugees. Well, the refugee resettlement process has been halted. That means we have no family reunifications happening. Because of some quirks in the system, it's not at all uncommon for us to process part of a family, have half the family show up, and then 6 or 8 or 10 months later, the rest of the family arrives. At the time, January 20th, when the order came down halting refugee admissions, we here at Catholic Charities were expecting 230 people. That's 230 people who had gotten through that massive security process and had plane tickets and were expecting to come. They were almost all family reunifications. Now nobody knows if or when they're ever going to be able to reunite. It also has effects on employers. Top Louisville employers that we work with, GE Appliance, UPS, Amazon, Walmart, JD Swift. These are places that for many, many years have been filling their third shifts, their most necessary jobs with newly arriving refugees. We no longer have people coming in to take those jobs. To documented immigrants. A lot of people are finding that their status is being changed. These are people who, prior to January of 2025, were documented. Temporary protected status has been revoked as many countries. That includes Haiti and Afghanistan and many others. Student visas have been revoked. CHNV, those were the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan visas. They were specifically intended as 2-year visas. Those have been revoked. So a lot of the Cubans who came here may have come on those visas. They came legally, but they no longer have legal status. There is a new provision that has been announced that anyone who wants an H-1B visa will have to pay a $100,000 fee, in addition to meeting all of those requirements that I talked about. What that means in Kentucky specifically is going to have a major effect on our rural hospitals, many of whom are staffed by foreign-born doctors and nurses. We've also seen a lot of dropped cases with defense. So you can present an asylum claim in one of 2 ways. You can bring your own case for asylum, or you can bring it defensively against a deportation proceeding. And a lot of what's happened is that cases where someone has been here for less than 2 years and has a pending asylum claim, the government will drop the original action, which has the effect of dropping your defensive asylum claim, which was filed as part of that action. Presumably, you will refile your asylum claim, but not if you get detained in the meantime. And we are seeing that enforcement priorities have shifted. People who have lost their status, who had status or losing their status, people who have been here, living here undocumented, in many cases for years, have been cooperating with required check-ins. They are being detained and deported when they go to their appointments. They are the low-hanging fruit. Those are the easiest people to find. They do what you tell them to do. You tell them to come to the courthouse for an appointment, they show up. They're very, very easy to collect. Where are they being taken? Here in Kentucky, our county jails have signed, 9 county jails have signed 287G agreements to cooperate with ICE and hold people for ICE in county jails. Kentucky's county jails were already vastly overcrowded, and they are now 30% more crowded than they were a year ago. Typically, after some period of detention at the county level, they're moved to ICE facilities in some other parts of the country. What happens after that really depends on their current status, whether they're able to get communications out to friends and family members. A lot of times people don't know where they are, where they're being held. They don't have a lawyer. Their family members may not know what happened to them, only that they didn't come home. We know that more than 170 citizens have been detained nationally. Here in Kentucky, we are not seeing the kind of dragnet ICE raids that are happening in other places. The ICE presence in Kentucky at this time has been fairly small. However, people are living in fear. There's a lot of anxiety. This is very stressful and tremendous anxiety-inducing for people who are immigrants of any kind, whether legal or otherwise, because as I said, people don't know what to expect about their status when things are changing so rapidly. Okay, I've talked way longer than I meant to, and I want to give people at least some brief opportunity for questions, so I'm going to stop here. Lisa, there is, if you could speak to this, there is a narrative or perception about crime and about the usage of government-supported programs, whether that be SNAP or healthcare or whatnot. Could you just speak to how the immigrant population impacts that? So statistically speaking, immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than native-born Americans. So I won't say there aren't any immigrants committing crimes, but it's certainly not the driver behind crime in the country. With respect to benefits, undocumented immigrants don't have access to government benefits, period. As for documented immigrants, their access to benefits is fairly limited. Refugees typically are entitled to access some government benefits. They're all working, so their access to benefits typically depends on family income. If you've got a really big family, a lot of these Congolese families that we're resettling, for instance, will be families of 7, 8 kids. So a working parent still will qualify for food stamps, for instance, for all of the children, just given the family size. Sir?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Tom Roberts, and I will say on behalf of my wife as well as myself, thank you for what you do. We have very direct experience with volunteering, and your agency has been wonderful throughout the years.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
Thank you so much. This may be an off-the-wall sort of question, but you represent Catholic Charities, Catholic, the Archdiocese of Louisville. I think that those of us around here understand there are a number of things being done right now that could be considered immoral. And as the Archdiocese of Louisville, I know your bishop cannot simply do a broadside and say, all you priests talk about this, but there's an opportunity for priests in the various congregations to educate their congregations. Is anything like that going on?
Well, I can tell you first at the national level, the Conference of Bishops is talking about this quite a bit. There are great resources and information available from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and their Justice for Immigrants resources. On a local level, we have some priests who really do know a lot about this issue and are very passionate about it. But a lot of our priests, they don't have any more information about this than, most of the people in the room. We at Catholic Charities spend a lot of time, I've given a lot of presentations in the past few weeks and the past year, and even before that. We spend a lot of time, we've done parish presentations specifically where we go and we talk in the parish about immigration, I think 3 in the last couple of months, trying to talk specifically and educate people about not just a little bit that I gave you here today, but a lot more about what it means to be an immigrant in our community and why it's so important for our church to be present in welcoming the stranger.
I'm Nick Garner. I had seen it up on your slide. I don't think you had a chance to mention it, but could you speak a little bit about the mayor's decision to capitulate with the demands of ICE?
Yeah.
I know for myself, I was deeply maddened by that decision with regards to the ICE holds.
I understand that. It was a tough decision by the mayor. I will tell you, I don't know that he had a good option. His concern, as I understood it, was pretty clearly that he wanted to prevent the kind of dragnet raids that we are seeing in places like Nashville. And somehow, Louisville never said it was a quote-unquote sanctuary city. And in the first Trump administration, there was we didn't change anything from the first Trump administration to the second Trump administration, but suddenly we appeared on the list as a sanctuary city. And so the mayor's office reached out and tried to figure out what was going on with that. And was told, you've got one policy, and if that policy were changed, we'd take you off this list. The number of people at that time who were being picked up by LMPD for criminal activity, and we're not talking about traffic stops, we're talking about like somebody who's been arrested for assault and is in jail, who was also potentially subject to an ICE detainer. And the way that worked is that ICE can send a note that says, hold that person for up to 48 hours, we want to come and get them. And historically, Louisville just said, we're not holding. If we have to hold them until they have a hearing and get bail, and maybe they don't even leave at that point, maybe they don't make bail and they're still here and then ICE comes to get them and that's how it works, but we're not gonna hold them just for you. That was the way we used to do it. And now if they say hold them for 48 hours, we are. It's not ideal, but it is a pretty small number of people in previous years that would have applied to. And I think that the mayor's calculus, as I understand it, of course it wasn't my decision, thank goodness, was that it was better to put that handful of people who had already been arrested for crimes at a greater risk of being collected by ICE than take the risk that, somebody's abuela shopping on Preston Highway and, 3 kids who are citizens but look brown are going to be subject to, roving bands of ICE people on the prowl, which is not, like I said, really something that we're seeing in this city right now. I don't know if that'll last, but at least at this time, Louisville and Kentucky have not really been on the radar we're seeing about 30% more ICE activity than we saw last year, which is a lot, but certainly not anything compared to what's happening in other places.
Thank you. What we value, so keep this in mind when you look at it. Thank you very much. And as Lisa said, she's more than happy to stay and answer more questions because there's a lot there. It was incredible. Thank you. Wish we could have more time. Next week, a lighter subject. Dan McDonald, baseball coach at the University of Louisville. But he's a strong leader, and he'll probably talk leadership, not baseball, but some baseball. Louis Cedar, what is Rotary Table? Hope you all have a great weekend and your teams keep winning.